Regulators! Mount up!
Do you like what you see here on the outside? You're going to love what you see on the inside. Why do people like Hooters? Well, usually they give two reasons: the hot wings and the waitstaff. Hooters pioneered the concept of the breastaurant. The business model was shockingly simple: serve comfort food, pour cheap beer, play sports on big screen TVs, and exclusively hire attractive women, requiring them to wear short, tight uniforms. But this simple concept raises some serious questions. How did Hooters manage to succeed despite decades of intense criticism, controversy, and relentless lawsuits? How did they manage to legally get away with violating standard employment and discrimination laws? Is it true that the end of Hooters is officially near, following recent mass closures and bankruptcies? And perhaps most bizarrely of all, why did a chicken wing restaurant start a commercial airline? Yes, seriously. In this video, we're going to answer all of those questions as we take a journey through the bizarre, highly controversial, and surprisingly legal history of Hooters. Our story starts, fittingly enough, on April Fool's Day in 1983. Even the founders didn't think their idea was actually going to work. They were 6 friends with absolutely zero experience in the restaurant industry. They just wanted a place to hang out where they couldn't get kicked out. The plan was to put all the things they liked together in one place: cold beer, hot wings, big TVs, and girls. That would be their unique selling point. Employees were required to sign a contract stating they agreed to wear the iconic Hooters girl uniform, and that their primary responsibility was to interact with and entertain the customers. As for the name, the company claims it's a reference to the sound an owl makes, hence the owl in their logo. But let's be honest, it's an obvious double entendre pulled from an old Saturday Night Live sketch. On October 4th, 1983, the very first Hooters opened its doors in Clearwater, Florida. But their chances of success looked incredibly slim. Almost every recent business in that specific location had failed. The founders were so unprepared that they literally had to beg a friend to drive down just to show them how to turn on their industrial kitchen fryers.
To make matters worse, on opening day, 2 police officers showed up demanding to see their alcohol license, which hadn't been approved yet. The founders thought they were getting shut down on day 1. It turned out the cops were fake. One of the founders had hired them just to prank his business partners. When they weren't pranking each other, they had to market their restaurant on a shoestring budget. One of their first marketing campaigns was renting a giant chicken suit and running around the local streets trying to flag down cars. As ridiculous as it sounds, a local newspaper actually wrote about the stunt, bringing in a small wave of curious customers. But their massive nationwide break came during the 1984 Super Bowl. Washington Redskins star player John Riggins came to Hooters for lunch before a game and loved it so much he brought his entire team back afterward. Photographs of massive NFL players hanging out at Hooters circulated in national papers, and almost immediately, their sales doubled. By 1986, the first Hooters girl was featured in Playboy magazine, giving the brand millions of dollars worth of free PR. By 1991, Hooters had hit over 50 restaurants and $100 million in revenue. Some people clearly loved the concept. Others, however, absolutely hated it. In 1997, 3 men from Chicago sued Hooters after being denied employment based entirely on their gender. Hooters settled, paying the men nearly $20,000 each. In response to the backlash, Hooters agreed to create back-of-house jobs, like cooks and bussers, that were open to everyone. But they drew a hard line. They would absolutely not change their rules about only hiring women for their waitstaff. They were called Hooters girls, after all. This caught the attention of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who launched a massive federal investigation. Their conclusion? Hooters was clearly discriminating based on gender, and they should be forced to pay millions to all the men who had been rejected. But Hooters had a genius, albeit controversial, legal defense up their sleeve. Normally, a restaurant cannot deny you a job because of your gender, but Hooters argued that their waitresses aren't just servers, they are entertainers. In employment law, there are different rules for entertainers. For example, a casting director is legally allowed to practice gender discrimination if they are casting for a specifically male or female acting role. Hooters told the courts that women were auditioning for the specific role of a Hooters girl. Furthermore, there is a legal loophole called the BFOQ, the Bona Fide Occupational Qualification Exception. This recognizes that in rare instances, hiring a specific gender is an absolute necessity for the business model to exist. Hooters successfully argued that the essence of their business relies on female sex appeal. And incredibly, it worked. Hooters even used the lawsuit to their advantage, running a massive mocking ad campaign featuring a giant hairy man named Vince squeezed into a tiny Hooters uniform to show the public how ridiculous it would be if they were forced to hire male servers. While Hooters was dodging federal employment laws, they were about to step into a completely different kind of legal trap, all because of a terrible manager's joke. In April 2001, a local Hooters announced a contest. Whichever employee sold the most beer over a specific period would win a brand new Toyota. The waitstaff worked overtime, pushing beer sales as hard as they could. The winner was a waitress named Jody Berry. Her manager blindfolded her and walked her out to the restaurant parking lot to present her prize. But when the blindfold came off, there was no car. Sitting on the asphalt was a toy Yoda, a small plastic action figure from Star Wars. The manager burst out laughing, explaining that the contest had started on April Fool's Day. It was all a prank. Jody, who had worked incredibly hard to win what she thought was a life-changing prize, didn't find it funny. She sued Hooters for breach of contract and fraudulent misrepresentation. Hooters quickly realized they were going to lose and settled out of court. While the exact number wasn't disclosed, Jody's attorney publicly stated she walked away with enough money to go to a local dealership and pick out whatever type of Toyota she wants. Despite these legal hiccups, Hooters was practically printing money. And in 2003, they decided to do what any logical wing-slinging restaurant chain does when they have too much cash. They started an airline. In 2003, Hooters purchased a small operation called Pace Airlines, completely rebranded it, and launched Hooters Air. They painted commercial jets bright orange, slapped their owl logo on the tail, and offered flat-rate cheap flights, typically around $129 each way, to destinations like Vegas and the Bahamas. But the marketing hook was what happened inside the cabin. On every single flight, 2 local Hooters girls were plucked straight out of their restaurants and put on the plane. Now, to be clear, they were not the flight attendants. Federal aviation laws require highly trained personnel for safety. The Hooters girls were simply there as in-flight entertainment. Midway through the flight, they would walk the aisles in their skimpy uniforms, host trivia games, sing songs, and sell merchandise. Amazingly, it actually worked for a little while. The sheer novelty of it drove massive ticket sales. But the honeymoon phase didn't last. After just 3 years, Hooters Air was bleeding money, ultimately taking a devastating $40 million loss. The timing couldn't have been worse. The aviation industry was still suffering from post-9/11 travel anxieties. Budget airlines like Southwest were ruthlessly undercutting their prices, and fuel costs were skyrocketing, destroying the already razor-thin profit margins of the airline industry. There's an old business joke. If you want to be a millionaire, start with $1 billion and open an airline. It also didn't help that Hooters carried a heavy social stigma. If a family was booking a vacation and a standard airline offered the same price as Hooters Air, they were going to choose the airline that didn't feature waitresses in hot pants. In 2006, Hooters Air was permanently grounded. Surviving an airline collapse was one thing, but Hooters soon faced a threat they couldn't just throw money at. Society was changing, and new competitors were stealing their playbook. Chains like Twin Peaks and the Tilted Kilt entered the market, offering the exact same restaurant premise, but with better food and a slightly more modern aesthetic. Meanwhile, Hooters' core demographic was aging out. Studies started to show that millennials and Gen Z consumers simply weren't interested in. Internally, the cracks were showing too. A study by the University of Tennessee highlighted that working at restaurants had severe negative impacts on women's mental health, citing higher levels of anxiety and disordered eating. Lawsuits regarding toxic workplace environments and weight requirements began to pile up. In 2021, when Hooters tried to mandate an even smaller, skimpier uniform, the waitstaff took to TikTok to protest, forcing the massive corporation into an embarrassing public backtrack.